Welcome to Laughter for All. It's the podcast with comedian Nazareth.
Hello from Southern California. Welcome to the Laughter for All podcast. This is comedian Nazareth. And for the next hour, we intend to make you laugh, entertain you, and encourage you. And I have an awesome guest with me this week you're going to love. And I challenge you to call and ask your questions because you're going to get real answers. It's not padded. It's not, have any fluff to it. Just real answers from a man that's just one of the most transparent people you're going to ever meet. So Mark Gungor is amazing. So I always start, what did I do this weekend? For the first weekend in about 6 or 7 weekends that I'm home, I was in town. And Friday night, John had a show. My son, my 21-year-old, is doing comedy. He's been doing it since he was 2, but he had a show and I drove him. I was the driver. So I took him to the show. It was one of those in Rialto where you couldn't find the place. It was in a building that looks like a school. But anyway, he went up and did his comedy. Well, the guy that put the room together or the managed the room is one of my opening acts at my big event, Sizzle C. And he goes, Nazareth, would you like to do some time? This is like telling a drug addict, hey, would you like a line of cocaine? You know what I mean? I mean, even though you weren't planning on it, you don't want to do it. But then I saw the audience. I'm like, it's an all African-American audience. I'm like, okay, would love that. So I went up and did 25 minutes. It was great. And John looked at me like, I thought you're coming here to take me. I wanted to do a show without you. But anyway, that was my weekend. Saturday, we were working, me and my daughter, on the history project. I don't know why schools give history project. The parents going to end up doing it. I mean, come on, it's a challenge between me and my daughter's friends' parents. It has nothing to do with the kids. They're never going to learn anything. So, History Day, please save the time. What else did we do? Sunday, we went to church. Then we went to visit friends. So it was a good weekend to stay home, spend time with the kids. Okay, I want to give you a taste of our next guest. I mean, let's play the video, a little bit of what he does. I mean, you have to be at his event. So Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. Oh, The Tale of Two Brains. It's amazing. So let's play a few minutes and then I'll introduce him officially.
Number one, you need to ask him more than once. Asking a man to do something once is like never having asked him to do it at all. Why is that? Men are always in such a take mode. We're constantly take. We compete taking. We're in business taking. We're just take. We're just in this take mode. And all of a sudden, his wife will say to him, honey, will you do such and such for me? And his left brain says to his right brain, you hear something? His right brain goes, nope. Tick. It takes more than once to get through to the boy. Now, a lot of women, they think that, that their husband, they're holding out on him. That we are sitting there intentionally not doing what he asked us to do, just because we're full of hate. But I promise you, when you asked it, it went in one ear, spun around his nothing box, and shot out the other one. And he doesn't remember jack about what you said. Now, when I was first studying this, I thought, this can't possibly be true. This has got to be inaccurate, because I'm married to a woman who has no problem asking me more than once. She said, honey, will you do such and such for me? I go, no. Come on, sweetheart, do this for me. No. She says, come on. She's got the thing, she pats my cheeks. You're such a good husband. Do this thing for me. Okay, then I do it. So when I was first reading this, that they were saying women only like to ask one time, I thought that can't possibly be true. And I remember I was in a church in Green Bay, Wisconsin at the time. I was one of several pastors at a large church there. And I before service started, I thought, I'm going to ask some ladies because this can't possibly be right. So I quick came up to a lady. I said, let me ask you a question. She said, yeah. I said, do you have a hard time getting your husband to do stuff for you? She goes, Pastor, you have no idea. She says, I asked that man to paint the ceiling. That was back in October. It's March. He doesn't do it. He walks in every day. Just, I mean, she's just getting mad. Tell me about it, okay? And I said, okay. I get it. But let me ask you a question. Because remember, I want to prove what I've just been reading wrong. I said, let me ask you a question. How many times did you ask him to do it? And she stared at me like a dog at a new dish. She said, once. I was stunned. I says, why wouldn't you ask him more than once? She says, I shouldn't have to. I said, you might want to try that. I got away from her. Went to another woman. I said, come here. And she says, what? I said, let me ask you a question. Do you have a hard time getting your husband to do stuff for you? She says, Pastor, you have no idea. She says, I will ask my husband, honey, put away the laundry, and I'll stick it right in the middle of the living room. And he didn't do it. He just walks over the top of it. He just walks around it. It'll sit there for a month. And she asked me with all seriousness, she said, Pastor, can't men see laundry?
That was Mr. Mark Gungor. Mark is a senior pastor of Celebration Church. It's a multi-site church with 3 campuses across Wisconsin. He's the CEO of Laugh Your Way America. He's the author of several books, including the best-selling one, Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage, where you need to read it. If you even remotely, you're married, you're single, you want to be in a relationship, you want to understand men or women, you read that book. Mark is one of the most requested speakers for the U.S. Army, and his Laugh Your Way materials are used extensively by chaplains, military personnel, and he has been featured on national broadcasts such as Focus on the Family, Life Today, and ABC News. I'll tell you what, I toured with this man. We were in Germany. We were almost kicked out of the train because we were loud Americans. I see how people, like we were in Fort Benning, Georgia. You see the couples walking into the building to hear Mark Gungor. You can see him walking, looking, there's about like 3 or 4 inches or sometimes a foot between them. You see him leaving, holding each other, hugging each other. This man does something for marriages in our country, in our world. Welcome, my good friend, Mark Gungor. How are you, Mark?
Good. How are you?
Thank you so much. I know you're so busy. I know you are very, very busy. And
I'm working really hard. I'm working so hard.
Don't stretch. Don't do it all in one day. Are you?
I'm sitting on my boat.
You have one of the best man caves I've ever been to.
That's right.
Yes, the pool table, the video screen, the what do you call it? The radio studio, everything is amazing. When do you have time to do all that, Mark?
It's all about pacing yourself, my brother.
So you pastor a mega church. That by itself should take all your week, 7 days a week. And then you travel more than anybody I know with doing the Laugh Your Way events.
I don't know. You're pretty busy.
I am.
I was busy man. You're everywhere.
I was busy this month. I had 15 shows this month, and somebody was asking me yesterday, said, what did you do different to get to 15 shows that month? I said, I got on my knees a few months before. I said, Lord, I'm having a slow year. Can you help me out? And that was all I did. But so what do you do when you travel?
I tried to get you. You're too busy for me. I'm too busy
I love to come.
I got things to do.
I love to come anytime you want me, and I know, what do you call it? So you have this full this 3 campuses, and when do you have time to actually leave and do your your Laugh Your Way events and then go all to Germany or all over the world? South Africa. You just came from South Africa, right?
Yeah, well, back in July, yeah. Actually, we were in South Africa, and then we went to Bulgaria, and then to the Czech Republic, and then back home.
Wow.
But that's unusual. Usually I fly out Thursday morning, I do the conference Friday night, Saturday morning, fly home Saturday night, preach Sunday morning, and then do it again the next Thursday. So
where do you get that energy?
that's what we do. I don't know. Actually, I'm like you. The thing about performers is we're kind of narcissistic. We love it when people pay attention to us, and we get energy from it. So what people would think would be exhausting is really not exhausting to us. I say you can always put people in 2 categories. Either being around people gives you energy, or being around people slowly sucks the life out of you. And most people are actually in the second category. It's true. The vast majority of people listening to us right now are in category 2. They like people. They enjoy people. Oh, it's nice. But by the time you leave, they're exhausted. They've only been there 10 minutes. Oh, I don't know when they're going to leave. I mean, it just slowly sucks the life. But guys like you and me, nay, nay, I say unto thee, nay. We love being around people, and it literally energizes us. And we're much more energized being around people, especially in an audience situation where they're all looking at us, than if we were sitting home by ourselves.
That's right. That's awesome. So, what is the Laugh Your Way event about? For someone who never heard, which I doubt it, if someone who never heard about the Laugh Your Way event, what is that about?
It's about using comedy to help couples to see themselves in a better light, to try and understand each other. I don't try to get people to change. I mean, bad behavior needs to change, but other than that, ever trying to change somebody. Every single argument in marriage boils down to one very simple argument. Why can't you be more like me, right?
Right.
I mean, clearly I am brilliant and you are mentally ill. So that's a pull all the time. We're always going at each other. Be like me, be like me. So I'm not trying to change anybody. I just try to get people to understand each other. This is why men do what they do. This is why women respond to things the way they do. You may not like it, but when you start to understand it, you go, oh, okay. And the tension starts to go down. So I just use a lot of humor to help people to understand each other. That's really what the event's about. So it's not it's not a marriage conference. We don't like using that word because it's not a conference. You don't have to take notes. You don't have to have emotional breakout sessions where you have to pour your souls out to each other. Any of that stuff. You just laugh, listen, and learn. And as you've seen firsthand, it's highly effective.
It is. Oh, it's very effective. And to see at the end when you have the couples look at each other and make promises to each other and they're all in tears. I mean, these are military people, the ones where I've seen. So what is the difference between a man and a woman?
Oh, my gosh. There's so many differences. We just tend to think different. Generally speaking, I mean, there's always exceptions. You can't describe all men one way or all women one way. But there are generalities. And we tend to look at life differently. And as I said, if people are different than you, it tends to frustrate you. And you get angry at it. Once you start to understand why people do what they do, it changes everything. For example, let's say you go to work and, someone in the office is being a jerk. And they're just making you mad. You want to just punch them or something. And then all of a sudden you hear, oh, yeah, his grandma that he loved so much died suddenly last night. Then you go, oh, okay. So now you know why he's doing it. He's still a jerk. He's still being short, but you're not mad anymore.
That's right.
Because you know why he's being that way. It makes sense. Same thing is with people. When you don't know what motivates them and why they do what they do, it'll always make you mad. But when you start to understand it, then the lights go on and things are different.
Now, how, I don't know, like in the beginning of the marriage, you get married and then the woman has so much respect for the man. And 2-3 years later, it starts going down the drain. You get to 10 years. It's like the whole respect thing is out of the house.
Well, here's the thing. Statistically, they say that on their wedding day, a woman's sense of joy is extremely high, okay? Mm-hmm. But over time, she gets sadder and sadder and sadder. Men are also happy on their wedding day, but not nearly as delusionally drunk and happy as their wives, but then over time they tend to feel more satisfied and fulfilled. So what happens, it starts crossing where now the guy is more satisfied and she's not. And then now they're angry at each other. And this is really, actually, it's a bigger problem for women typically. I mean, you know, you can't say that about everybody, but more of a typical problem for women. Women tend to have very unrealistic expectations from their marriage. You probably don't experience that as badly as most Americans because your wife is from the Middle East. she hasn't been completely poisoned by Western culture. But, and it's bad, dude. It's bad. I mean, these girls get married and they literally think he should meet all the needs of my heart and soul and all kinds of nonsense that, quite frankly, Christians promote. Man, I've been on major Christian ministries. I could mention names, but I will not. But they placate, they pander to a female point of view, and it's not helpful, quite frankly. The reason they do it, and I'm just telling you the truth, it sounds bad, but the reason they do it is it's the women who buy their books, it's the women who make the donations, it's the women who go to their conferences, and they tend to placate and pander to a female point of view. Now, as I had one major ministry, which you all know listening right now, I won't mention any name, but I'm about to show up and speak, and one of their mucky mucks, you know, in their big office called me and said, well, we appreciate you coming, but whatever you do, don't say anything disparaging about women. And that really ticked me off. Said, who says I say anything disparaging? Well, I'm just saying, you know, you don't do that. And just to be a jerk, I said, well, is it okay if I say anything disparaging about men? And he says, oh, yeah, we have no problem with that. I mean, that's the approach to this. Right. Everything is from women are great, men are evil, men are bad, men don't understand. And the reality is men are not broken, sick, twisted perverts. We're just men. Men and women view things differently. And I try to get women to understand that about me. I do both ways. But the one who always seems to have the greatest impact is the women. And they leave my conferences and they feel 1,000,000% better because they go, oh, okay, now I get it. And they're not as frustrated anymore. But when all you do is placate to one point of view, you're not helping people. I was on another of these ministries being interviewed, and the lady threw me a question, you know, kind of like a softball question, one of those easy questions to get the conversation going. Uh-huh. And she said, well, Pastor, don't you agree that a man should meet all the emotional needs of his wife? And I said, absolutely not. And she goes, what? I mean, she is stunned. She's like mortified that I would answer that way. I said, come on, there's not a man on earth designed to meet all the emotional needs of a woman. You can meet some of them, but to put that all on a guy's neck and to convince women that's what should be happening now creates unrealistic expectations, and now you've got problems. And this is a major, major marriage ministry where they are telling women that a man should meet all the emotional. Now, if you're hearing this nonsense, you were happy in your marriage, now you're not, because he's not doing all this stuff. Or a man's supposed to be the more spiritual one in the home. He's the spiritual leader of the home. You know how many people have said that and heard that? I bet you, I don't have any money to bet with, but if I had a bunch of money, people right now, if you ask them, did you know the Bible says a man should be the spiritual leader of the home? 98% of everybody listening to me right now would go, yes, that's what the Bible says. And you know, as I do, the Bible does not say that. No place does the Bible anywhere say that a man is supposed to be the spiritual leader of the home. The most you can get is a man supposed to be responsible for his home or the head of his home, but who is or who is not more spiritual, there's no way you could say. There's a lot of women way more spiritual than their husband. There's, you listen to most preachers on marriage now, well, the man should be the most spiritual. Now she's upset because he's not more spiritual than she is. He should be more spiritual. How come I'm more spiritual? Stop. We create problems by repeating things that are just not true, and all of it all goes to build up a twisted perspective.
So whose responsibility for the kids to grow in the faith? Is it the dad or the mom?
Well, I think both have the responsibility, without question. But it's not a question about who's more spiritual. Who's more spiritual? You know, the analogy I use in the Old Testament where you always have the king and the prophet, right?
Right.
The king has the final say, but it never makes him the prophet. Okay? And the prophet hears from God, but it never makes him the king. what if our homes are supposed to be like priests and prophets? What if the man is the king of the home? King and prophet. What if the man is the king of the home and the wife is the priest? She'll be more spiritual all the time. But it doesn't mean that she should have the final say. The king always has the final say. In fact, if the king tried to do something before hearing the prophet like Saul did, he got in trouble. Right?
Right.
The king had to wait for the prophet, and the prophet had to speak. But the one who is the most spiritual, the one hearing from God, was not the king. How come that way? Because the way we think, well, if someone's the most spiritual, then they're in charge of the home. No, they're not. A wife, and look, who is more spiritual? It doesn't have to be one or the other. People are who they are. I'm just saying, when we start holding up these pictures that are unbalanced and they're unbiblical. So if your wife is way more spiritual than you, and you're not as spiritual as she thinks you should be, she's going to get mad at you now because she heard on Christian radio that man should be the most spiritual one. And so pastor said, no, man should be. It doesn't say that in Nazareth. It doesn't say it anywhere.
That's right. My wife is a lot more spiritual than me. I mean, I'm the one that going all over the world sharing Jesus, and I'm doing Bible study in my house. But I'll tell you what, this woman is solid, and she's the one who's really. I give the credit to for my kids being believers and growing in the faith to her. And I felt guilty because I heard that and they're like, well, I need to be the spiritual leader, and I try, and sometimes I see her walking and I open my Bible and I close my eyes. Honey, I'm praying. Don't interrupt me right now. But I think she's
that's
hearing.
what I told
She's
you.
listening. I
Your wife
ruined
has not
it.
been polluted. Your wife has not been polluted by a Western perception. She's from the Middle East. She probably didn't even think much about it. But if all her life she heard the man should be the most spiritual, now she's going to be mad at you. Now you guys are going to be fighting. Now you're struggling. Now you feel bad. You already said you felt bad because you heard that. How's that helping people? It just just make everybody feel bad. And in fact, the Bible never says a man should be more spiritual than his wife. It's all not. That's just one thing. Man, there's so many things like this, Nazareth, that we are doing. So much of these marriage ministry things, I think, are not very helpful at all. A lot of them just make things worse because they come and they beat up the man because he should be more insightful and more emotional. Says who? Where do they get that from?
I remember
How about
when
you be who you are?
Right.
Go ahead.
I remember when people walk into your event. I mean, I do the comedy, and then you tell them, and hey, relax. I'm not gonna bag on you. I'm not gonna be, which is true because they're sitting there. They don't want to be there, and then they feel comfortable at the end, and that was nice. Now,
because you validate them.
Right. You said what I know you go all over the world. Is marriages around the world, like in South Africa or in Czech Republic or other, is it the same as marriages here?
Pretty much, we're all messed up. and the more Western they are, the more they struggle. South Africa is a very Western country. This is not a third world country. There are third world countries in Africa. South Africa is not one of them.
Right.
It's almost like driving around Chicago. And Czech Republic, all these are westernized countries. And the more westernized they get, the more frustrated everyone becomes. And part of it is because of these romantic concepts that are pushed that are just unrealistic expectations. It's like this. If I sold you a car, let's say I sold you a Chevy, I don't know, Equinox or whatever.
Right.
Or the guy at the place calls you Chevy Equinox. Now you're driving your car and you're as happy as you can be. But then I come along and say, if you're driving a Chevy Equinox, you should get about 400 miles per gallon because that's really the way it's supposed to work.
Right.
Well, now you're not happy. Why? Because someone just told you your car should get 400 miles a gallon. When it was getting 20, you were happy as can be. Because now they're giving you unrealistic expectations. No car gets 400 miles a gallon. If you're driving a Tesla, and then you still got to plug it in.
Right. Right. So now, so I come from the Middle East, and people know that. I've been here 35 years. I'm Americanized. My wife been here 23 years, so she's getting an American. But because I have a ministry that help refugees, and you always hear the Middle Eastern man and there's men here like Latinos or maybe Asian men, like they think hey, submit to you, the wife has to submit and the man is the head, and they have this culture that goes behind them and say, a woman should cook, the woman should clean, the man is the king of the house, and he just sits there and orders thing, and the kids have to be quiet when he comes home, and all this garbage. And some of them even get to the point where like they feel like the woman just she's never equal to him. How do you deal with that?
Well, that's also unbalanced. Look, they're unbalanced everywhere. Everywhere is unbalanced. We just need to smooth this thing out. So here's the problem in Middle Eastern culture, Christian culture, is and there's a lot of, believe it or not, there's still a pretty strong element of fundamental Christians who think like that. The wife should always, submit and always. Here's the interesting thing: the Bible never tells a man to make his wife submit. He is told to love his wife. The wife is told to submit. They're talking to two different people. Now take Islam. Islam says, make your wife submit. The difference between Christianity and like Islam is we don't make our wives submit. We just love them, and she should work on respecting her husband. Everybody's supposed to mind their own business. You see what I'm saying? Read your mail. When Paul's talking about respect and submit, he's talking to women. When he's talking about love and sacrifice, he's talking to men. But then we come along, and if a man starts quoting verses about respect and submission to his wife, he has now stepped out of line. The Bible never tells the man to take care of it. He tells the women to take care of it. So, but you go to Islam, it is the man's job to make sure his wife submits.
Why isn't that being taught at the church, Mark? Why is the church not teaching that?
Man, honestly, I don't think people think very much. Here's the thing about marriage. The Bible says very little about marriage. It really does. It says very little. So they're kind of looking for stuff, and then we just all keep repeating the same stuff over and over again without using our brains. The reason why virtually every Christian will say, yes, man should be the most spiritual in the home. The reason he says that is because he's heard it 1,000 times, even though the Bible never says it. It's like Christmas. How many wise men were there? 3. It doesn't say that. The song says it. We 3 kings of Orient. So you keep saying the same thing over and over again, and you don't think. Men who go around, pastors even, who say, men should make sure their wives submit. They're just, look, God bless them, thank God for them, but they're morons. Anyone who says that is a moron and ignorant of the Scriptures. The Scripture never tells a man to make his wife submit. It tells the wife, you need to do this in respect. Tells the man to love his wife. Everybody should mind their own business. The only religion I'm aware of that tells a man to make sure his wife submits is Islam. Any Christian who is going around telling his wife to submit is acting more like a Muslim than a Christian. Why we have this problem? I just don't think people are thinking. They're not reading the Scriptures. They just make stuff up.
On the side note, I'm so glad you said this about the 3 wise men, because a few years ago we broke one, and every Christmas we stopped bringing the other 2 out in the lawn because we wanted 3. But now I put duct tape on his head. His ear fell off, so I tried to duct tape. It didn't look good. So this year I'm bringing 2. I'm like, if anybody has a problem, I'm going to say Pastor Mark. So, but back to this whole thing, the whole thing, like, okay, here's a couple. And, the husband is very well known at the church. Everybody loves him at the church. They think he's the greatest guy. He gives, he tithes, he's nice, he's all that. The wife is the one, okay, now there's a breakup, there's a problem in the marriage. The wife comes in and to the church, and everybody is looking, you need to submit. You're looking down at her. So she's getting double abused now, abused by the husband and abused by the church. And what do you think of all that?
Oh, it's sad. Look, Christians are imperfect. I get that. And people are going to make mistakes. I get that as well. But they're just wrong in what they're doing. I don't know what else to say,
Right.
I get it that they're spiritual, high tithing and all these other things. I always tell people, look, if you can't live this stuff at home, you can't live it. All right? And we've also, the reason you're even bringing this up is because what you're describing is fairly common. You have major guys in churches that everybody lets them, respects them, and kisses their feet and everything, but he treats his wife terribly, and nobody calls him on it.
That's true.
And I think it's just sad. And why not? The love of money is the root of all evil. I think people are afraid that if you're a major giver, people don't confront you. If you're not a major giver, people will confront you. So I don't know. I don't know what these guys are thinking. You remember Chuck Colson?
Yes, of course. He's a friend.
Yeah. Okay, so Chuck got a letter. It was one of the last things I saw that he had written. But he wrote a piece about this pastor's wife. Not pastor's wife. Just a lady in the church. She comes to the pastor and says, "My husband beats me." and it and hurts me. The pastor says to her, this is Colson telling the story. The pastor says to her, "You just need to go home and submit more." Colson says a week later he had killed her.
Ah.
And Colson said what was so sad to him is that they went around asking other pastors about this, and he says 2/3 of all the pastors that he talked to, something like that, would have all given the same advice. I mean, how terrible is this?
That's terrible.
Again, it's only because people have said this is the answer, and no one challenges them on it. Nobody goes to the scriptures to take a really good look at these things. So you got most pastors who would tell a woman who's being beaten that she just needs to go submit more. Again, God bless him, but he's a moron, and it's destructive. Why they say that? You keep asking me why. I have no idea. It doesn't, I think anybody using common sense, all of these things would go, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense.
So what do you tell a single man now looking to get married? What do you say to him?
Pick well.
What's the criteria? What do you look for?
Oh, I don't know. It's different for everybody. Here's the thing. Don't get emotionally rattled so much. Use your brain. Think it through. Women do the same thing. I was sitting with a bunch of women back when my wife was dying, and they're talking about, oh, how hard it is. I said, no, it's not. You know what you want in a man. Ask the questions, but don't telegraph the answers. For example, if a woman wants a man who loves children, when you're dating him, you don't go, "You really love children, don't you?" Well, then he's going to say, "Oh, of course, right?"
Right.
The way you ask the question is just without giving your opinion. What do you think of having children? Well, now he could answer anyway. You might like children, you might hate children. He doesn't know. He's going to tell you what he thinks. Well, I can't stand children. Then great. Order the most expensive thing on the menu. I don't ever see him again. I mean, how hard is this? I'm telling you, they're making it way harder. Listen, shortly after my wife died, I was married again, and I'm happy as could possibly be. But I chose extraordinarily well. Why? Because I asked the right question. Really, if you ask my wife, she'll tell you it was more like a job interview than dating. But I knew exactly what but I didn't telegraph any of the answers. What do you think about this? Well, what about that? And she answered everything perfectly. I mean, she had no idea what I wanted. And I knew this is perfect for me. But if I started asking about one thing, she answered in a way that I wouldn't like, then I would just move on. The problem is people aren't asking the right questions. They're getting Christians either get too emotionally involved or over spiritualized. They think, oh, God brought me this man. Well, that's not the way it works. He who finds a wife finds a good thing. You got to go looking. You got to find. You went and found, man. You went all the way across the world.
Yes,
because you got to go looking. But if you ask the right questions, this isn't that hard. Even like online dating. People say, oh, the problem with online dating is there's so many pigs. Well, that's great. You can tell they're pigs up front. What's bad is if you couldn't tell. Most of these guys that are just bad news tell you right up front. But then if you're asking the right questions, you can find out if you sit down, figure out what you want out of a person, and then when you start asking them questions, ask them in a way that doesn't give your opinion. Like someone who says, I really like to have a lot of fun, or I really like to go camping. And he says, do you like to go camping? Well, the guy's going to go, oh, yeah, sure. What you do is you ask, what do you think about things like camping? And you can almost add it in a way that you don't like it. And he'll go, no, I hate that stuff. Well, then right there, the guy is going to fight every weekend because you want him to take him camping, and he's not taking you camping. Just ask the questions. If you ask the questions the right way, you can find out almost everything you need to know about a person. Most of these people are getting married, and they don't know jack. And you know what the main complaint I get from women is?
What?
Well, he told me about it ahead of time, and he said he liked to do those things. And No. That's not what happened. What happened is you telegraphed the answer you wanted, and he gave it to you. This is not that complicated.
That's awesome.
The thing is, singles almost never ask me to speak because they all get mad at me because it's like telling a 3-year-old there's no Santa Claus. Which, if your listeners just heard that for the first time, I apologize that I broke that to you for the first time on the show today. But I mean, they don't like it. So when I get around singles and I start talking about something like this, you know what they want to hear? They want to hear that God's going to do it all for you. Yeah. It's going to be magic. And if you just have this, that's why those single or the married people are driving crazy. This isn't as hard. That's what I'm telling you. This marriage thing is not as hard as everybody makes it out to be. It's just not. but you have to use your brain.
Right.
Think it through.
I think for me and Maha, I think mostly one of the things is we're willing to. It's not the word submit. It's like, hey, I don't want to be selfish. It's when I'm selfish and I feel the Lord saying, hey, Naz, you're being selfish. That's when she's frustrated. But she's selfless. She'll do anything I want. I will, in return, automatically. I want to do what she wants. So that's what makes our marriage great. And I think it's great. I mean, it's not perfect. It's great. But I just want to take a little break and talk to you about one of the funniest story I've ever heard in my life. It was one time you were going to go and speak to men on the, I think was it on the radio or something, and you didn't have any clean underwear, and what happened? Remember that story?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I believe I remember it. A little bit, yeah, I think so.
And I'll share it. What happened is you didn't have any underwears. You forgot to pack any underwears, and your wife had Victoria's Secret underwear. So you goes, why not? And you wore it, and you went to the radio interview, and you're telling men to be strong and to be men and
to be manly and make decisions and be a man. The whole time I'm sitting there in ladies' underwear. Yes, it was horrifying. All I've worried about on the way to the interview is I'm driving and I say, oh, I hope I'm not in a car accident. Because then they'll see what I'm wearing. And I pray, oh, God, don't let me crash. Don't let me crash.
So
anyway, your mother always says, put on clean underwear in case you're in an accident.
Yes, and that what? That's so funny. And I remember one time the way we met is we went to one of our friends who was the last week's listener. Ken Davis, forgive us if you're listening, because we went to a conference, and me and you were sitting in the back and just laughing with each other, not even
screwing around.
Yes,
we're terrible people. Don't ever invite us to one of your conferences to be a participant because we won't take it seriously. So we're like the bad kids in high school, right?
Yes.
We're in the back row giggling and stuff like that. And by the time I got down, I thought, man, I really like this guy.
Me too.
That's how we became friends.
I have to tell you, you are the most transparent pastor person I've ever met. You're real. You don't care. How many complaints do you get sometimes from your congregation?
That depends on the day.
And you're one of the best dressed people I've met. I mean, you always look sharp.
That's what I'm talking about, baby.
But you know what? Life wasn't easy. I mean, I remember. We know Debbie. Debbie went through 4 or 5 times she had cancer, and
for 20 years she battled that.
And in and out of it. And you were there, and you were there. And the last few months and last year, I remember I used to call you, and you were upbeat, you were strong, but you were there, and it hurts. I mean, of course, it's your wife, and she's going through that, and you were there loving on her, and I remember coming to the funeral, because I mean, when you used to go up on stage, like when in Germany or in in Fort Benning, you're up there for 2 hours. Guess what I'm doing? I'm sitting with Debbie. We're talking and laughing and all that.
Screwing around in the back.
Yeah, we're screwing in the back. Like, come on, this guy. I hope he never invites us to his events. But and then when I came into the funeral, and I remember lines and lines of people were shaking your hand, and I come to you. And I remember what I said, listen, and you go, you made it all the way here? I said, yes, because I want to tell you one thing. Debbie asked me not to tell you till she dies. And he goes, what? She said, you were the most miserable husband ever. And it was a joke, of course. And you screamed out laughing, and everybody in the funeral looking like, what's wrong with these people laughing? But that was great, and now God blessed you with the end.
By the way, that was one of the kindest things that anyone has ever done. I mean, it's not like you live in Illinois and just came over. You live in California. My guess is you were the one who came the furthest to that funeral, and you got things to do like everybody else got to think. And it was the kindest thing that you went. Man, you remember it was snowing that night.
Yes.
There were people in town who didn't come because of the snow. I'm thinking, Nazareth came all the way from California.
I didn't do it for you. I did it for Debbie. I did it for Debbie. I would never do it for you. I'll come for you if you pay me, but I wouldn't do it for you. I did. So
it's not already booked.
Here's a question for you. Do you tell your spouse everything?
Every thought that goes through my head, no. Who advocates stupidity like that? Because we all. No, I'm serious. And I know some people are mortified right now. There's times when your wife will, or your husband will irritate the snot out of you. And you don't look at him and say, man, you're irritating. Now you're going to just make her mad. Just shut up. You don't have to say everything you think, everything you feel. Here's my line of 2 words. My best advice for marriages. Be nice. Be nice. Okay? You don't have to say everything. Well, I just got to speak the truth. Really? Shut up. Unbridled truth is not helpful to people. It can be damaging. It's like if you see someone who's really ugly, you don't come up to them and go, man, are you ugly? I mean, that's true, but now that's very hurtful. So do I tell her everything I think and feel? I do not.
No.
If it's anything about her, and I have literally sat there and I'm irritated by something, and she says, what do you think? And I say, I just thinking, oh, what a wonderful person you are. You say, you're lying. Well, I'm sure the Lord will forgive me. But I got to live with this woman. I ain't telling her every little thing that I think and feel.
I don't. They don't tell us either. I mean, they don't. So but I tell my wife everything at 3 a.m. while she's sleeping. Like,
I told you.
What do you tell a woman? What do you tell a woman who, she gave up on her narcissistic husband, but she still lives there for the kids to make sure the kids are, have a safe home. They're taking, she's not fighting with them anymore. She's just frustrated and upset. How do you encourage a woman like that? She knows there's not a big chance of him changing, or what do you do?
Well, I think you can love somebody even if they're not what you want. I mean, God so loved the world that he saved just those that were really nice people. No. He reached out to everybody. We need to love everybody. And if your spouse isn't what you wish he were and you feel... some of the most freeing things is just to relax. I had a lady write to me, and she was so miserable in her marriage. So she said, what should I do? I said, I want you to sit down, and I want you to write down every expectation you have had for your marriage. So she sat down. She wrote page after page. Who writes pages of this stuff? I don't live it or something else. I'd have like half a paragraph, I hope she likes me and wants to get naked once in a while. That's all I want, But no, these women, one thing after another. And she got, okay. I said, I want you to take everything you wrote, and I want to put it in a shoebox. She said, okay. So she put it in the shoebox. She said, now what do I do? I said, I want you to get your husband, and I want you to go out, dig a hole, and bury it, and have a proper funeral. So she grabs her husband by the hand, pulls him outside, makes him dig the hole.
Wow.
Puts it in there. They buried it. She said, we had a moment of silence and went back into the house. She told me weeks later, she says, I have to tell you, I have never been so happy in all of my life.
Wow.
Where I just let everything that I wanted and stuff like that. And then she started to enjoy her life and started to enjoy him. Sometimes these expectations, which is how we started this whole conversation, these expectations will get us in trouble. Some people just need to ease it up on some of these expectations.
And what if he's a
jerk? You can love anybody.
What if he's a jerk and abusive verbally and all that, and there's no change in narcissism?
That's different. Sometimes you got to get away from situations that are damaging. I understand that, but that's not most marriages. In fact,
right.
I'm kind of glad because you said you were going to encourage people to call. I'm glad no one's done it because whenever I'm on the radio,
do we have someone on the radio calling? I know. I promised my engineer that he can ask a question about marriage. So, Sean,
that's fine.
This is your chance to talk to Mr. Gungor.
How are you doing, Pastor Mark?
Good.
My question is, okay, my wife is really, 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 really hyper. And, so she's the type of person who will vacuum at midnight just to get things done. And am I ever going to get used to that? Or do I just need to just give in and just be behind her?
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Was she like this when you married her?
Yes.
Then shut up.
That's good.
If I were you, I'd tell my
No, I'm
neighbors to
serious.
complain.
No, I mean, it's a great question. You know, I was getting, this lady called me once and she said she was so angry because her husband was collecting beer cans. She said, the beer cans, I ready to divorce him over the beer cans. What should I do? I said, was he collecting beer cans when you were dating him? Yes. Well, then shut up. You saw this going in. You know, another lady calls, I'm ready to divorce my husband because he smokes. Really? Was he smoking when you were dating him? Well, yeah. Well, then shut up. I don't understand this. If you see it that's what I'm saying. People aren't opening their eyes and looking and thinking. You marry someone who's hyper, then you get mad because they're hyper after you marry them. Well, of course. I get mad at someone who smokes. He's smoking the whole time, and I marry him, and I'm mad that he smokes. Now, if she was never hyper before, and now she's crazy hyper, I'd probably call a doctor. Maybe she's a little crazy, you know. But if they were that way from it's like guys like me in Nazareth, okay? The problem with guys like, actually, we don't consider it a problem. We consider it a great joy. We're never serious. We find the funny in everything. And I got to tell you, to people, some people who are close to us, that really gets irritating after a while.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Well, but any honest woman will go, well, I knew that. That's what I was wearing, you know. But when you start acting like, well, why are you always goofing off? Well, it's because what I do. I've always done this. And they start screaming for you to change at that point. I think that's fundamentally unfair. You know, I would just, I don't know. If she wants to vacuum in the middle of the night, send her over to our house.
Why don't you just put like hardwood instead? Maybe will fix the problem.
True. Maybe I will.
Are you live in an apartment or a house?
No, a house.
A house, good. So neighbors don't complain.
No.
Okay, so yeah, I would put wood, right?
Good idea.
Yeah.
Listen, I promise you, as I said at the beginning, most arguments are about why can't you be more like me? And it was just unfair arguments is what it is. You know?
That is so true.
And,
so true.
And if they're that way, just roll with it. You know, I mean, you can try and change them. Everybody can, you know. Look, we all improve each other, but it takes a long time. You know, all studies have shown that marriage improves, particularly men. Men become much better men through marriage over time. Married men are happier, they are healthier, they live longer, they make more money than their single counterparts. Same race, same education, same everything. A married man will perform and be healthier and better than a single man. In fact, a study came out of the University of Chicago that one of the most dangerous things is for a man to be single. It's the equivalent of smoking 2.5 packs of cigarettes a day. Isn't that amazing? I guess the worst thing is a single guy who smokes 2.5 packs of cigarettes a day. So I always tell women, look, men, you can change and make it better, but you got to think long term. I always tell women, look, the good news, girls, all you girls listen to me right now, the good news is you can improve your husband. The bad news is then he dies because it took so long, okay? You just got to look long-term project. You can eventually help your wife be a better person. She can eventually help you because you'll kind of rub, you know, and drive each other crazy. But you got to really think long-term. It takes a while for people to start acting differently. And maybe she never does. So what? You know, so she's a high-energy woman. Let her stay high-energy.
That's right. That's a great answer. And so you are newlywed, and you are in a long honeymoon. I follow you on Facebook, and I see you all over the world. And you know, you've been through a lot with Debbie. And what do you tell someone, a husband or a wife, that is taking care of a terminally ill spouse? How do you encourage them?
Oh God, what can you say? I mean, there's nothing you can say. It's just that this was the deal. This was the agreement, right? We'll be together till death does us part, and sometimes death parts us. You know, everybody dies, boys and girls. Everybody dies. It's just a matter of when and how. And sometimes God will do. And I'll tell you what. In Debbie's case, there were many miracles. Remember, they told her 20 years ago that she would live for 5 more years.
Right.
20 years later, she's still enjoying her grandchildren. You know, and then it finally caught up to her. She's 60-something years old. Boom. But I mean, it is what it is. You know, the good news is that, you know, God cares about you. He will encourage you. Hopefully you get around people who will encourage you.
Right.
But, you know, then then everything changes. Again, I got married fairly quickly afterwards. Statistically, they say when a woman becomes a widow, she mourns for years. When a man becomes a widower, he tends to remarry within months. That's actually the facts.
Why
because
is
men
that?
just don't do well on their own.
They
Men don't do well on their own.
Hmm.
You know, now you probably because how old were you when you got married?
I was 33, the same year Jesus gave up his life.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay. So actually, you waited a while. See, most of us got married. We kind of went right from mama to our wife's arms. You know, especially my generation. I'm in my 60s. So any guy in my 60s, they all, and by the way, we all got married young. The people who built this country routinely got married at 16, 17, 18, 19 years of age, 21 latest. You know, you're old. You're an old man.
Well, Mama
Yeah.
lives with me, and she lived with me for 20 years after that, so that's why I waited. I had Mama at home. But you're right.
But
You're
I'm just
right.
saying that a lot of guys that's their life. So when my wife died, I didn't know any. I can't cook. All I had in the house was cornflakes and that stupid cat. And I'm a pilot, right? You know I fly.
Right, you fly
I can
planes.
fly a high jet-powered aircraft in the middle of the night, wind blowing, can't see 2 inches in front of you, and land it safely on the ground. But I couldn't run a washing machine. What is all this? I don't understand. What temperature water? I don't know. How fast do you want to spin? It matters how fast you spin. What does that mean? I don't even. So I'm telling you, I ain't doing this. I ain't staying like this. You know. Now some people got married, mad because they got married. They got married too soon. But you know, the promise is until death, not death plus 20 years.
It's always
You know,
the women
Jesus-
that get mad at pastors or at
I know.
men who get married right away. It's like, oh, well, he
Because
can
they
even-
think that then if my husband did that, that means that I didn't matter. It does not mean that. Well, you forgot your wife. I have not forgotten her in any way, shape, or form. There's 45 years of my life. There's no way you're just going to forget about her. But this idea that you have to remain single is if now you want to remain single, that's totally up to you. But if you choose to move on, you kept the promise.
And the Bible
know,
said
so
that. You know, go ahead. You're free to get married again. And
Exactly right. Jesus was very clear. There is no marriage in heaven. That's one of the reasons they call it heaven.
This
I
is
know,
coming
that's
from a
terrible.
man
That's
who does
terrible.
events all over the world about marriage, people.
No, I love being married, but I'm not doing this for eternity. I can't imagine anybody I'd want to sit in a room with for all of eternity, for heaven's sake. It's just not the way it works.
Right.
Make a promise, keep the promise. If you're freed through something like that, then it's up to you. It's your choice. You can stay single or you can get married. You can stay single for, here's the other thing. At my age, I don't have 7 years to think around, you know, before I move on. Some guys do, but I'm just saying, I'm looking at the clock. I'm not at the end, but I can see the window from here, you know?
Oh,
So
you are the youngest. You are with your energy and your
But if
attitude.
I was 30, that would be one thing.
Right.
If I was in my 40s, it'd be one thing. If I was 57, it'd be one thing. But at my age, no, I want to do this. I want to move on. And I did, and I've got a wonderful girl.
Yes.
And I told when I was going through on my Facebook, anybody who followed it, I predicted, I said, look, before this year is up, I will be happily married. And
You
most of you
predicted
who
that.
disagree with me that are single will still be single. They'll still be single because they believe all this over-romanticized and over-spiritualized nonsense. And I got a great wife because I was paying attention. I was asking the right questions. I wasn't caught up in emotion and all this other nonsense, you know. So
What
I'll
do
tell you, by the time I was actually ever alone with my wife, I'd already decided to marry her. I mean, I was sold just from talking to her on the phone and stuff. So, and I was right, and things are just fine.
You know, I spend a lot of time because when I met Maha, we were engaged within 5 days. I came back to the States for the whole year. We talked on the phone, and that's what really established. That's why we have a good marriage. We talked a lot. We weren't worried about what's on the menu or look at this restaurant wall. We were talking the entire time, 3 hours a day, and that
I know,
really,
yeah.
that really helped. And Maha
was
did
helpful.
ask questions. You know, she asked a lot of questions, and I didn't feel like I have to. Oh yeah, sure, just whatever, so I can please her because I'm about 6,000 miles away. So we open up.
Yeah.
But what do you tell, in closing of this wonderful time with you, Mark, what do you tell someone who's contemplating divorce right now? What do you tell them?
It's it depends on the reason. My wife now is divorced. She was divorced, but her husband was sexually unfaithful to her. And that's kind of a deal breaker. It's really, people debate on what the reasons are for marriage failing. Well, the only one that is crystal clear, I'm not saying it's the only one, but the only one that's crystal clear, Jesus said, because of sexual unfaithfulness. So that was her situation. Now, some people work through that. That's their choice. And, to be honest with you, I think a lot of times Christians feel forced to walk through it because that's what everybody wants. They want a happy movie ending and stuff. And we don't realize how hard it is. I talked to a lady. She says, my husband cheated on me, and everybody wants to hold it. So I finally got remarried, and she looked at me and she says, I am miserable. I hate it when he touches me. I can't. So how's that an answer? Everyone was clapping and cheering. Oh, because they kept it together, and we got our, what was that movie? The prayer room.
The war room. The war room.
War room. Yeah. They got their war room ending and stuff like that, and everybody. But now she's miserable. Some of these people, because of sexual offense, they might stick it through, but man, they are struggling for a really long time. You can choose to do it if you want, but you do have an out. Now, someone's getting divorced just because they're not getting along, or because they're not paying the bills on time, or we argue too much. Here's the thing about divorce: it's really expensive. You will pay a huge price. You would think just because of the financial cost alone, people wouldn't do it. Statistically speaking, the one way that you can guarantee you, your children, and your grandchildren will live at or below the poverty level for the rest of their lives, we're talking 3 generations, the way you can guarantee that, get divorced.
Wow.
Divorce is a major poverty. You know how in the country, Nazareth, you hear all these politicians arguing about the haves and the have-nots and all that kind of nonsense? Do you know the haves and the have-nots is the same group of people that are married and the ones who are not? It's the same group. The left, I'm not going to get into politics here, but one of the reasons the left has the following they have is because these people, their government becomes their husband, becomes their wife. They take care of things and stuff like that. That's why most people generally tend to vote conservatively. It's absolutely true. The people who are the most financially stable people in America are the ones who stay married. They create wealth. In fact, they create multi-generational wealth. When you get divorced, you throw all the... Now, there's some people who can survive it. They are unusually wealthy. If you got like $5, $6, $7 million in the bank, you get a divorce, you'll kiss off half of it, but then you got $3 million to live off. You can still do it. Most people, look at Hollywood. Oh, they got divorced, they're fine. Well, yeah, with their money. But most people, I'm telling you, better to work it out than to go down a path that is going to be financially devastating. And you would think more businesses in America would support marriage initiatives and hire guys. A lot of businesses do hire married partners. But do you know why? Because if Johnny and Susie, let's say you make a washing machine. If Johnny and Susie get divorced, you think they're going to buy a new washing machine?
No.
No. They're going to buy a used one. You know who's going to buy a new washing machine? Maha and Nazareth, because they're still married. One of the greatest economic generators is marriage. It's family. It's people staying together. So at the end of the day, there's lots of reasons not to get divorced. My quickest answer to that is your life is going to stink at a level you have no idea. The financial misery alone that you and your children and grandchildren are going to experience, it's just not worth it. Again, sometimes you don't have a choice, and I get that.
Right.
And I'm all for that. And I don't think we should force people, if they have a choice. But short of that, man, don't do it. It's not worth it. Right. It's a lot easier. I'll say this real quick in ending. No. The University of Chicago did a study, and they took people who were married and miserable. I call them M&Ms. All right? You got these M&Ms, and they're married, and they're absolutely miserable with each other. So they were interviewing them. It turns out 50% of them got divorced, and the other 50% stayed together. They interviewed them 5 years later. The people who got divorced because they wanted to be happy were still miserable. The people who stuck it out 5 years later all reported they were exceptionally happy. Divorce seems like a way to get happy in the short run, but in the long run, it doesn't make you happy. You'll get stuck in still a miserable situation. Better to work it out, because in a few years, everything could change dramatically.
That's right. Well, Mark, thank you so much. I know taking an hour of your day, that's a lot, and I really appreciate it. You know how much fun we have when we're together, and people, I want to encourage you. Number one, go to Amazon, get the book, Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. Or no, not Amazon. Where can they get the book? Can they get it from your markgungor.com?
Yeah, markgungor.com.
Go to markgungor.com, and if you're a
You
pastor,
can get it at Amazon, but I
but
make
why
more
not?
money when you come to my
Yeah,
site.
markgungor.com is better. And if you're a pastor or a leader and you want to really you love your congregation or you love your group, you need to bring the Laugh Your Way event to your establishment, to your church. And also, if you want to laugh your head off and learn, you can go to YouTube and go to Tales of Two Brains. This is the funniest thing you can see about marriage. And Mark, thank you so much. If people have questions, you can go to markgungor.com and ask him the questions, and he will give you an honest answer. This was I was expecting us to laugh a lot, and we did, but this is very insightful. There's a lot of things I did not know, and I know the listeners didn't know. You are so insightful and funny. I love you, man. Thank you so much for your time. And in
I
closing,
love it. I can see you in a couple of weeks, right? Are you coming to dinner with us right there?
where am I coming to?
We talked about it. We're going to be in Camarillo in a couple of weeks, and we're talking about a Saturday night. We're getting together for dinner. I'll have to remind you.
You can remind me. Yes, remind you. I'd love to come and see you and Dion. And yes, thank you so much, brother. And in closing, join us next Monday, another podcast. Next Monday, I'll tell you who's going to be with us. It's going to be, of course, my memory does not help me to tell you exactly who's going to be, but I can tell you. Next Monday is Pastor Chuck Booher from Crossroad Church, the mega church, 8,000 members. Him and his lovely wife, Pam, they're going to be with us. So if you have any questions about mega churches, about marriage, about life, about pastor, you have a question, he is my pastor, and you can come and join us. If you like this podcast, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Comedian Nazareth, or Twitter at Nazman, Nazzman, or LinkedIn at Nazareth R. You can also watch me on YouTube under Comedian Nazareth TV. My new show on Dry Bar just came out, and already we got over 150,000 views in a couple days on those Dry Bars. So if you go to Dry Bar Comedy, and you can watch the thing, and just want to encourage you, laugh more often, and just pray. And if you live in San Diego area, on the 18th of October at 7:30, we have our big show, Laughter for All, and it's free. And also, if you're in the Beverly Hills area, November 2nd, we have a Laughter for All. Again, it's free, and free parking. For LA, that's a lot, but we're paying for it. So you come for free. And last thing is, if you're in the Corona or Riverside area, our gala is this coming Thursday, October 10th. So you can join us for that gala. Find out more info. Just go to NazarethUSA.com and send me an email, a message. Until next time, may the Lord bless you, guide you, and shine His face upon you and give you wisdom. Keep on laughing. It's good for your face, for your muscles, make you look younger. Love you guys. See you next Monday, and God bless.